I wanted to introduce you. Kathleen Sweeney is with us today from BookBrush. You are the Director of Marketing and the Manager of Operations, which I know is a long title, but it's often in close-knit teams. We have to wear many hats. So thank you so much for joining us and lending us your expertise in the author space.
I am happy to be here. And you know what? I'm going to add to my title here because, it's a small company with big dreams. So I'm also the janitor at times and the fun one around here who likes to get on Zoom.
That's fantastic. I love it so much. So tell us a little bit of an introduction to BookBrush. What is BookBrush all about? What are some of the services that you guys offer? How do you help out authors?
BookBrush has been in the author space since 2018, and we are an online platform and resource tool for authors. So, there's a lot of nice design tools out there, but they're not all designed specifically with the author in mind. So, we've put all these great things in one marketing toolbox. So, when you sign in as an author, all the things that you find in there are author related. And so we have primarily, and what we started with, a do it yourself platform, which you can make all those different promo graphics that you need, even your own book covers, book trailers, lots of cool things like that. And then we've also added to the mix over the years where we have people who say sometimes, can you just do it for me? And we can. So we also do custom book covers. And our newest product that we've launched is social media management, where we will take the wheel and handle social media for authors.
I think that's so great. As a creative myself, I know how much I feel like sometimes the whole self-promotional side, A, can feel really uncomfortable, and B, is so labor intensive that it gets in the way of the creative work that I want to do. And I know so many authors feel that way too. There's such a burden for them to manage their whole brand and marketing presence and publication, and with independent publishing and everything else, there's so many things that are not writing that authors have to do. And it's just great that you guys offer that service for them.
I think that's the part nobody tells you about when you say you're going to write a book. And you're thinking, I'm going to write this book. Little did you know there's all these other things that you just mentioned. And there's a whole lot of marketing pieces that are going to be on your own plate. So our goal is to meet authors wherever they are in that writing journey, try to make that a little less painful, sometimes even fun.
Fantastic. So tell me a little bit about how you personally ended up at BookBrush, because I think this is a really great story.
So we'll go back a few years here. The co-founder of BookBrush and I started working together in 1998, which has been a little bit, and we both were doing consumer credit counseling for a not-for-profit agency. And then I left to go to another company where I was doing insurance subrogation, and he followed me there. Then he left and started email marketing in the Christian space. So I followed him when he was ready to start with the author space. So we've been back and forth, kind of helping each other build our careers as we go along.
I think that's fantastic. I have a few people like that who've been in my career where it's like we just really like working together. So whatever the next adventure is, it's sort of like, well, what are you doing over? Yeah, I'd like to come along and help out. Like that sounds great.
It's
And
been really
so
fun.
I also know that you're a big time reader too. So I have to ask you about your reading habits, what kind of books you love, and how that kind of informs your job now that you work in the publishing industry, kind of, or
So it's
adjacently.
it's really been cool since I've been with BookBrush. We started in 2018, and I came on board right then. And I told you I was a reader, and that is really a big part of my life. I've been averaging about 70 books a year, which for some people that's oodles. For some people it's not a lot. It's about what I can tackle. But this job gives me a front row seat in the author space that you wouldn't have, in a lot of other ways. So as far as genres and what I like to read, I'm gravitating most of the time towards domestic suspense, psychological thrillers, and those kinds of things. The ones with like the bright font on the cover, the big bold words, like, yep, I'm grabbing that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's usually like the Cap's handwriting when she
Hmm.
was last seen, that sort of thing. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So, as a reader and as someone who helps authors as they not only brand themselves but brand their books and do a lot of covers, what do you think about the phrase, don't judge a book by the cover?
So everybody says don't judge a book by its cover. Well, we all do. That's the thing. Like people, you could have the best, most well written and well crafted story, but if your cover either doesn't look professional or just doesn't give off the right vibe and genre, your book's not going to get in the hands of the right readers. So I'll tell you, you should not judge a book by its cover, but you will be with the general population who is judging a book by its cover. So that's actually a nice way for me to also mention, because we value covers so much, we do custom cover design. And we're a leader in the author space for all things design related, and that can translate to having a cover that is on brand for your genre. I mean, we're font nerds over here. Font's so important. You want font that also gives off the right vibe for your genre. Um, I've seen some people who had really great covers, but it just wasn't quite the right fit for their genre, which
Mhm.
then leads them down this unfortunate rabbit hole of negative reviews, because it's not that people didn't like the book, it just wasn't what they were expecting. So they were
Right.
wanting to read a different kind of thing. So
Mhm.
back to the don't judge a book by its cover. I think that's great advice, but we all do it.
Yeah, and I think that, to pull a little bit on what I think is the core of what you said here is that really marketing isn't about, do I like the cover? Is the image great? Is the font what I personally like? It's actually a communication tool that flags to the right audience. Hey, you might also like this book as well. This book is for you, and it helps you actually find your niche, which of course there are readers out there who read from all different types of genres, but I think the point is that the reader wants to be able to have their expectations met when they're encountering these sort of little subtle clues that we have all look at when we look at a book, whether it's the cover or the back matter or summary or whatever the case may be.
Very much so. And trends are trends because they work. And trends are obviously a moving target, but
Hmm.
that's what you get when you hire a cover designer. I don't know all the trends. I'm doing the fun things around BookBrush, but our cover designers are excellent at that kind of thing. So you're putting your book baby in the hands of somebody who can help you communicate that visually, and that
Hmm.
covers making the promise of what's between the front and back.
Absolutely. So, how do you feel like your relationship with reading has informed your experience at BookBrush?
That's a great question. So I do a ton of tutorial demos and things showing people how to use our tools and making sure that they feel good about using them. But as we're working through some examples, I'm showing them what to do. So let's say we're working on an author business card. So you need to take where it says author name and substitute in a name. So I type my name in and I always tell them, now I'm not an author, but I like to read. So I need you to keep writing so I can keep reading. And so that's been kind of fun. I've presented to over 300 author groups over the years and counting. And that usually gets a little bit of a chuckle from them. And I'm like, yes, but I mean it. So keep writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see independent authors facing right now?
I think in a lot of ways, they just didn't realize how many extra things there would be to do to get their book on the
Hmm.
market. And so, with the tools we provide, the different sizes are there, all the things to make that part a little bit more streamlined. We have different promo graphics, cover reveals, all of that kind of thing. So, we want to make the marketing piece easier for them.
So, is there one thing that you would say to authors kind of in this marketing domain where you say, like, hey, maybe marketing isn't your favorite, maybe you don't have a lot of time or money to put into this, but of the resources that you have, here's where, that's best spent. And it could be, different for every author, so we're not expecting this to be universal advice, or different across different genres and that sort of thing. But, what would be your suggestion for authors out there?
I think from my experience, it's super important not to forget about social media. Like for me, if someone says, hey, did you see that new book by Alexandra? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go check her out on social media. And if her Instagram page or her Facebook page is kind of meh, not a lot of content, not a lot going on, you don't really know if you maybe lost that sale. And that's how I would feel like, well, maybe I'll pick a different book.
Hmm.
Whereas if you're really robust with your social media and you're creating a whole experience on there, not just buy my book, but you also
Right.
have different quotes and scenes and things. So if you write mystery thriller, you're going to have a dark page. If you've got beachy women's fiction, it's going to be a lot more lighthearted. So people can just see, like, if they sit back and look at, I like Instagram for this a lot because you can see
Hmm.
all the different images that are there.
Yeah.
They get that experience and that vibe. So I'm saying this because with our book brush tools, if this is something you're going to tackle on your own, with a paid plan, you have unlimited downloads. So it is a little bit of a time investment, but we built the tools to be quick and easy so you can really get those graphics going fast and then schedule them for social media. We
Yeah.
also value social media so much that we do social media management for authors who just need to take that off their plate, but they know they need to be there.
Yeah, 100%. I think too, I love your exploration of really making your presence online sort of an extension of the worlds that people want to be in. I remember the first time that I read The Lord of the Rings and being like, oh my gosh, I do not want to leave Middle Earth. I wish I could spend more time here. And I know so many people feel that way about their favorite books and their favorite authors and wishing that they, I mean, that's why fan fiction exists, for example. It's like we want to extend this universe and keep living in that world. And so I think if you're, as an author, can tap into that desire of your readers who love your world to stay in your world, I think that's a great way to kind of extend that beyond the two covers of the book.
If you think about, there are people who want to be your super fans, give them the fodder to be your super
Yeah,
fans by posting consistently and great looking graphics that really do communicate and give off that whole entire aesthetic and vibe.
yeah.
Then they can be commenting and be fans.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, there's an author that I follow on TikTok, and I actually didn't realize they were an author because they only here and there will say, oh yeah, my next book is coming out. They're a really big author, but they had such great content about their life. They didn't even do like front facing camera. So if you don't want to be on camera, you don't have to do that either. And it's the author Abby Jimenez, who is really big in the contemporary romance space. I don't know if you know her name, but she's huge. And I followed her because I'm a dog person, and she has these two hilarious dogs. And she would just post content about her dogs. And I got so like connected with her world and what she was doing. And I finally realized like, oh, it's that Abby Jimenez. And every once in a while she would have a thing of like, oh, I'm just sitting here, working on my next book. But that would be, once every 10th post. So I think it's also great for authors to consider that people also just like to have a little bit of a peek into your life on social media as well. And so whether you have cute dogs or you have your cafe days where you're writing or things like that, those can be great pieces of content for you to share with, like you described, your super fans.
It's just been almost like they're fulfilling their dream, but I'm also getting to live in my dream of being working with authors and being right
Mm-hmm.
there. They're so well spoken. They're so much fun. I even was doing help desk tickets, and this is just such a great example of authors. Every now and again, you get somebody who's dissatisfied or not happy about something, but they pin the most eloquently, lengthy worded, fun to read, although they are unhappy. They did such a nice job of explaining it. I'm like, look, this is why I love working with authors. We used to do a survey question that said animals were if animals could talk, which one would be the rudest? Oh my goodness, we got the best answers from authors on that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would reply to the person and say, "You are the first person who has ever," and then put in whatever that particular animal was, and their reasoning was fantastic. So, while they're doing their dream, it also feeds into my dreams, and the book brush whole thing has just grown and been really fun to be a part of.
Kathleen, what's your take on like author branding and how authors should sort of tackle positioning themselves sort of in the market?
I love talking about author branding. So it's really kind of funny because, you're starting out and you don't always think about here's your first cover, here's your first thing. But these colors, these themes, they all become you. So then we talk to people about the font you're using, use that same font in your graphics each time. When people come across it on social media, they are like, oh, I recognize that. So here's some examples: the Harry Potter font, the Disney font. People know exactly what that is, even if it's not about that. We're probably not all going to get to the Harry Potter or the Disney status, but your fans are going to know and recognize that you're using that branded font, those colors, those themes. So there's that part of it. And the second part of author branding that I talk about is you are your author brand. People like to see your face. So don't be surprised or shy about putting your image on your graphics because that's what they want to see. And so, one of the examples that I talk to people about, and this is kind of a fun option, is if you put yourself on these graphics in a white t-shirt, you can keep putting all these different logos, like put a Christmas tree, put a shamrock. All of a sudden you're wearing a Valentine's top. So not only are you branded for yourself, you're also seasonal and right on top of things. And one of the last webinars when I did that, somebody put in the comment, everyone's going out to buy a white shirt right now. So it could be a fun way that you're in it, but you're still keeping it fun and spicing it up.
Yeah, I love that. One of the other authors that I follow on TikTok, people will find that I have a real addiction to TikTok. The algorithm is just so good, but is Ann Patchett, who of course is a hugely famous author, highly acclaimed, blah, blah, blah. But she was recently talking on her TikTok. She's gone through a couple of different publishers throughout her career. And so the cover designs for her novels over the years have not been super coherent. Some of them she's loved, some of them she hasn't. But her current publisher decided to reissue all of her works in paperback. And so that she was talking about this journey of like negotiating out how to have brand consistency because of this journey. And what some of her stuff did get replaced, but what they ended up doing is having really consistent spines so that she could keep some of the things that she really loved. So I think that even when you're a traditionally published author, you have a huge name, brand consistency is still something that you're shooting for. And so I think that's an excellent piece of advice because she was just talking about it just a couple weeks ago.
I love it when things all come together like, oh, I was just hearing about that and now I'm hearing about it again. It must be really a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody out there who wants to be an Patchett level author, which who wouldn't, you know, she is like looking at the importance of that for her presence online and for her recognizability as an author. So what do you think about authors using QR codes? How does that help them sort of with their presence online and with people being able to find their stuff?
QR codes are really a great option for authors for a couple reasons. So, just to step back in case somebody's not familiar with a QR code, it's at that little square digital looking box that people are going to scan with their phone, and then it takes them to a landing page with some information. So, I think they got a lot of popularity in COVID when nobody wanted any paper items, and so people were scanning. But then, if you think about that in the author space, they're super valuable because if you want to put them on printed materials, which is where we would recommend putting them on printed materials, because if you're going to scan it with your phone, it's kind of hard to scan it if you're looking at it with your phone. So printed materials are the way to go. We're talking like probably bookmarks, coasters, business cards, retractable banners, all those things. It's also good in the back matter of a physical book. But the thing is, maybe right now you only have books 1 and book 2 done. Your QR code goes right there. Later down the road, when you have books 3, 4, and 5 done, you're simply updating the landing page or the website where the QR code is taking them. So the QR code goes to a specific URL. It can be your URL. So that way, the bookmarks and the business cards that you handed out 2 or 3 years ago, they're not outdated. They're evergreen because you can continue to update that site. So we feel like QR codes are really important. So in BookBrush, there's a way to create your own, and then you can put it on the different things that you're going to send to a printer. So QR codes are really handy for authors.
So what's your take on authors kind of identifying a genre that they want to write in, or even maybe multiple genres? How do you balance sort of your passion, what you love writing in, versus what's popular, or even, you know, micro genres within it? Like you were saying, you know, oh, I do like suspense, but I particularly like the domestic suspense and thriller category, you know?
So I have a couple answers for you on this. First of all, I think a lot of people, when they decide they're going to write the book, already have some kind of inspiration. They're not just starting out from square one. So they've got that passion for the first one. Not that it's a book about passion, but they have a passion for what they're going to write. But then I talk to so many people who their life experiences, so it's not that they're writing a memoir, but maybe you're a private investigator, or you're an emergency room doctor. That gives you all kinds of amazing fodder for stories and for things like that. So again, that's still kind of your passion and the things that you know and then can create into stories. But then some people take a more business-like approach. And I just talked to somebody the other day who said, well, I've researched all the genres and I'm ready to switch. And I think there's the most room in this particular genre. And I don't remember what she said she was going to switch over to. She was going to do a different pen name so she's not confusing her followers. But that was purely a business decision. Like she felt the genre she was in was saturated more. course, there's always going to be people reading, and the super readers want to read lots of books. So, above all, keep writing. But for that, as a business decision, was really an interesting perspective. I don't hear a lot of people saying it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I am curious too on your, because I've heard of this too, of some authors like to have different pen names for when they're writing within different genres of fiction. Others prefer to have, keep the same name and have all of their oeuvre under their name and under their brand. Do you have any strong position or even reasons why it would work one way versus when you would recommend doing it the other way?
I actually have a lot of people who do a mixture. So we designed covers for a lady who, they were custom covers. She said, even my parents don't know my pen name. Like, this is top secret. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was really kind of interesting. But then some people will just make a slight change. So, like, instead of Kathleen Sweeney for the one, the other one is just KH Sweeney, and that's
Hmm.
their either spicier or more of a thriller or something different.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
People do like initials because I think some people have some preconceived notions about what a male writer or a female writer might write. And so those initials just kind of take that out of the equation. And then
Yeah.
it's like, oh, anybody can read that. Anybody
Yeah.
can read any of them anyway, but that's
Right.
kind of a fun way to do that. So I think it might depend on the particular author and their life. And then I know at 20 books, when I was just at that conference, it's called, well, it's 20 books to 50K, but it was the final season, so it perhaps won't be. um, so let me start over. So
Hmm.
at a recent conference that I was at, one of the panelists was up there, and she was writing in a genre that was pretty spicy. So she doesn't use anything about her real name because she has a teenage son, and so he knows she's a writer. But like that had nothing that she wanted. She didn't want him to get picked on or all those
Right.
things. So there's
Yeah.
another reason for keeping it super separate. At a different conference, I was riding in the shuttle with, so I'm in there, I'm BookBrush, and it's filled with authors in the shuttle, and everybody's saying, what do you write? And it was just so interesting because we had like Amish romance, the lit RPG, and then this little old lady who wrote really spicy. And I thought, I would have never guessed that. So, um, she wasn't hiding it. Some people want to. It's just whatever I think you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that's excellent feedback. That's excellent. Can you share a little bit about authors who love writing but struggle with building their community?
I think we have a lot of those who start out in BookBrush because we're a pretty budget friendly option. And so, and their efforts and plans to build the community, they need to, do social media, have the graphics. Maybe that's still in the position where they need to design their own covers, and we have an affordable option for that too. So, we have tools that can help them if they use them to get out there and help build their community. And then there's a lot of things that we talk about with our social media management, like hashtag strategy and researching carefully the different hashtags. You probably don't want one with a bajillion, that's a technical term, bajillion followers, because you're going to get lost in the mix. So try to drill down a little bit and find some of those nichier hashtags that people might be mindfully following. And so that gets your book and you in the spaces where those readers are congregating. I feel like congregating around a hashtag sounds funny, but that's where they're actually at. And that can help, get you out there and get you the followers. And it's not just all your neighbors and the people who go to your kids' school. It's people who really want to read your books.
Yeah, 100%. And as someone who is a reader and makes reader content online as an author, like we want to engage with you. We enjoy having conversations with you. And it's always helpful when you come in having something to say besides, please read my book. That's a hard conversation starter. So if you're engaging in your genre, you're probably reading in your genre. So if you have things to contribute to the conversation, we on the reader side really love to have those conversations as well.
I'm going to flip the switch on one of your comments too, the please read my book. So when we were doing a tutorial on author newsletters, one of the things was, remember, you wrote this book for somebody. Somebody's mom is going through cancer and they're sitting there and they need to read this book in the waiting room. Somebody else's kids drive them bananas and they need to read your book at night. So it's not a please read my book. It's a, I wrote this book for you and I know you need it. So
Yeah,
don't feel like you're begging them to read it. Let them know you know that they need and want to read it as
that's
a different
fantastic.
perspective.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah. What are the marketing channels that you think or social media platforms, marketing channels, places online, places in person, conferences that you think an author must be?
Well, every author is only one person, so it's hard for them to be all the places. When we do social media management, we're currently focusing on Facebook and Instagram. Those are the two that we do. So I would say we value those, but I really can't make any judgment on the other ones are probably fabulous too. If you like to sing and dance with your book, or you have people who follow TikTok, TikTok might really be the place for you. In-person conferences can be really rewarding. If you're doing something in person, make sure to research the direction. So like when we go as BookBrush, we want to go to conferences with authors who are there to learn the craft. If we go to one where there are also readers, the authors are there to talk to the readers and not learn their craft. So look at the conference and figure out if it's more of a reader event, which could be super beneficial because you can have your retractable banner with your QR code and be sitting there and people will come talk to you. But if you're wanting to go to a conference to hone your craft or learn more about marketing and those kinds of things for educational purposes, that's a whole different thing. There's lots of both. Just think about what you want to get out of it and the money you're spending to go and that it's the right fit for you. It's kind of good to think about those conferences because
Hmm.
we learned a little bit the hard way. Like we went to one that was more of a reader event. Well, nobody wants to learn about marketing tools
Yeah,
while they can schmooze with readers.
right. Yeah, I know. We've made those mistakes over the years in our companies as well. Like, oh,
Yeah, it's
I
like,
need to
oh yeah,
align the purpose of why I'm
mm-hmm,
here with why they're here.
yeah.
Yeah. What role do you think the aspect of authenticity plays with authors presenting themselves online for their reader audience?
I think there's such a wide variety, and it kind of goes back to the part we talked about whether they're really being themselves or they're using a pen name and they're something completely like my 90-year-old lady writing the spicy romance probably isn't putting herself as that because it just probably feels like an odd fit for folks who are going to read those things. On the other hand, if you are a quilter and you're writing books about quilting and that feels really authentic and you live on a ranch and the book's about a ranch, that authenticity can come through. So I think there can be both ways. You might be building this whole pin name and you're the man behind the curtain doing some other thing and it works out great. People love the things. And also people write about werewolves, wizards, those kinds of things, shapeshifters. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say most of those aren't real, but they are still writing about them. So that, the writing is authentic, but they probably aren't experiencing being a werewolf themselves.
Right. But, going back to the Tolkien thing, like, you may be making these whole worlds, but you really are a philologist who's obsessed with language, and that's coming through authentically in your work. So there's still,
Very true, very true.
so much of the kernel of who you are as artists, always comes through, I think. But whether or not
Well,
you want to advertise that you personally are writing the spicy books, fair enough.
and things like the medical thrillers or police thrillers and some of those like crime things, like there's a lot of truth basis and life experiences in those that would be pretty authentic,
Yeah.
potentially, if the author had experienced those and then was able to weave that into a really amazing story.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, when we talk about paths to publication, are there different paths? Do you pick a lane and just go? Do you just do traditional? Do you just do online? Do you do Amazon? Like, how do you navigate which paths you're going to take with regards to publishing?
Well, here at BookBrush, we just hit 100,000 users last year. So I'd say we
Woo!
have a little bit of everything and we celebrated and that was really exciting. But we have a lot of people who are indie published because that's a good starting point and it's easier to do than it ever was before. So there's a really good lot of tutorials, people that can help you get your book out there and get that done. Still to be traditional would be great, but there's the pitches, the getting an agent, some of those things. We also have a lot of people who are what they term hybrid, so they do both. So they might write for a publishing house on one side, and sometimes it's a different pen name, sometimes they're indie published for something else, or it could be the same author, but they have different series. So one they're doing themselves and one not. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to the path. If the path works for you and you're happy, not, I mean, a lot of people want to be a bestseller and have this be their full time, but some people it's just something that they want to have a few books out there and they're thrilled that they're or where they're at, but they're not necessarily planning to take over the world. And that's okay too.
Okay, so final question, where can people find Book Rush resources? What are some of is there like a free deal or things where they can start off and just explore the tool to see if it's a good fit for them?
Absolutely, yes. So we are an online platform. It's bookbrush.com. And I think it's great because online means that it's available wherever you're at. And whenever we put new graphics or post new images, those are right there for you. So you don't have to download updates to a program that you purchased. And because we want people to get comfortable with our tools and give things a little test drive, if you sign up for a free plan, you can create and download 15 images for free. So that's a really nice way to get started on social media. And you don't have a time limit on those. Some people use them in the first hour, like, whoo, I'm going to make a bunch of graphics, but you could save those up and use them as you go along. And that's a great way to get started on your quest to post on social media.
Hmm.
So I like that. And then if you want to do a paid plan, we have a couple different tiers and they're all paid annually. I like annually because we know that you need to be on social media and you need to be posting. So unlimited downloads over the year really gives you a great way to expand in your social media presence.
I think that's fantastic. Kathleen, thank you so much for your time. I love your guys' product and the work that you're doing, and I'm so excited to share this with even more authors so they can continue to write their amazing works. And you and I, as readers, we get to read even more.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to. Thanks for having me.